I'm Daniel Blackman, here and live from Greenprints in Atlanta, a conference that focuses on sustainability. Some great speakers here, but it's important for me today for one reason. There are two areas in the environmental justice movement and the conservation and sustainability movements that I want to focus on as an individual, and it's important that we look at bridging cultural gaps and generational gaps. We're here today to focus specifically on why it's important for all of us to get involved in a call to action for making sure we protect and preserve the environment. Everyone can do good right where they are. Everyone has a chance to invest into the future and to do things that will allow all of us to live longer, healthier, and stronger lives. For example, our children, not just in Atlanta, but around the world, who are dealing with asthma on a daily basis, or our seniors that are dealing with upper respiratory illnesses. Our goal is to focus on making sure that whatever we do at whatever time, it opens up the doors for other people to live healthy lives, to live long lives, and to live strong. Our goal, and what I'm here to do, is to make sure that we're investing into the future. So what I'd like to do at this time is, if you're out there and you need someone to be able to focus on helping you to bridge those cultural gaps, helping you to build those generational gaps, and reach out to audiences that may have been a challenge over a period of time. Our focus is to make sure that we do everything today to make sure you have a better tomorrow. Thank you so much. I'm Daniel Blackman, and I'd love to come out and consult, support, or even encourage some of the things that you're doing. Thank you. My name is Daniel Blackman, and I'm here to present on the Green Sports Conversation, which has really started about right around 2006, when a lot of the NFL teams, along with the Natural Resource and Defense Council and people like Dr. Alan Hershkowitz, who had an interest in sports, and Paul Allen with who the owner of the Seattle Seahawks and obviously the co-founder of Microsoft, a lot of people had an interest in this idea of how do we make stadiums more sustainable. And for me, if you would have asked me 10 years ago where I fit in this green conversation, to be honest with you, I don't think I would have been able to see myself presenting on sustainability because I didn't see where I fit. But then this thing called greening sports and greening facilities, it came to make sense because where I'm at and the work that I do, we help to brand companies, we help to encourage and bridge gaps that exist within the environmental justice movement. We talk a lot about bridging generation and cultural gaps. My focus has been over the last 6 years to focus on how do we engage professionals, how do we engage students, how do we engage people to make this conversation make sense? Because my access that I have, for the most part, deals with a lot of emerging leaders. And a lot of the younger, next generation sustainability leaders, they really didn't have a clear understanding of the idea of sustainability. There was actually a poll that I want to share with you before I start that came out. It was a Marist poll that came out, and the poll said that 61% of the people polled in the United States identified themselves as an avid fan. So they identified themselves as a fan, they had a team, they were just a die-hard, I'm a Red Sox fan, I'm a Yankees fan, I'm a Falcons fan, whatever the case may be. 61% of these people identified as fans, but only 13% of the people polled identified themselves as someone that followed science closely. And I saw that as a huge and an interesting gap. It was kind of a paradigm because the next generation of environmental leaders, if you don't like science, it's going to be really hard for you to want to know about wind and solar or LEED certifications or green buildings. So I thought that it would be great to find a way to take the conversation of sustainability and add a twist to it, and that twist today is going to deal specifically with green facilities. So why use facilities as a model? The impact on the green sports industry is phenomenal. It's immense. When I was in high school in 1997, kind of telling my age a little bit, when I was in high school, I remember when the internet boom kicked off. And when the internet came around, everyone knew it was going to be big, but no one knew the potential of what the internet was going to do, not only to the industry, but to all of us. I mean, 20 years ago, the majority of us in this room would not have even been able to fathom a Facebook or a Google or a MySpace. Well, the same thing is happening with the whole sustainability movement. This concept of sustainability is really in its inception. Even though environmental justice has been talked about locally and around the world for generations, the concept of greening facilities is a concept that literally is going to bridge so many gaps that exist because the sports industry is a $425 billion industry. In other words, $500 billion every year is spent on sports. And my next slide will kind of give more of a perspective on that. But I just want to show this first slide because I want people to really get the network of influence. And that influence consists of every industry you can think of, from the automobile industry to what most people that are attending this conference are here for, the steel industry. We're talking about facilities and equipment that go into the construction of these types of facilities. For example, I know most of us, whether you're political or not, have heard the conversation of the new Atlanta Falcons Stadium. Well, apparently there's been a deal reached. I have not been in any of those meetings, so I couldn't elaborate any further. But we all know that when that stadium is built, the competitive city that Atlanta is, I like to look at Atlanta, and I'm a person that has a lot of foresight and a lot of belief in looking towards the future. And I believe Atlanta has the potential of being the Silicon Valley of the South. If we play our cards right, we can build this city to be one of the most sustainable cities in this country. But it's going to take a team effort. It's going to take every single person outside of this room that's a part of various industries to come together at the table and identify how we green this city. As a matter of fact, many of you might not know, but as I go into my next slide, this talks about viewership. And before I even go into it, I want to tell you that Phillips Arena, if you didn't know, was the first NBA stadium to be LEED certified in the United States. As a matter of fact, Phillips Arena was in a very strong competition at the last minute. If you don't know the story of the LEED certification process that the Phillips Arena, the Atlanta Spirit franchise came about in making sure that this thing happened, you should really go and look at it, because it would encourage you to know that our city and the people and the leadership that's here, they fought to make sure that once we knew there was no other stadium, because what happened initially was that the leadership, the executives of the Atlanta Spirit, they went around, they were trying to find models of what they can do to make their stadium more sustainable, but guess what? They couldn't find it. Now, there were stadiums doing certain, things around energy efficiency and trying to save money. And in my presentation, I'll show you what some of those stadiums are doing now as a result of stadiums like Phillips Arena. But the interesting thing about it was once they understood that, they went on an immediate fast track to make sure that we right here in the city of Atlanta had a sustainable stadium in Phillips Arena. So if you look at this, the season views, and I want to paint this picture because I want you to know why it's so important to use sports as a bridge into sustainability. Now, 5 billion views are from the NFL alone. Now, remember, I said 61% of those people that were polled in the mayor's poll said that they were avid sports fans. Now, the viewership in these types of instances is very important, and I'll give you an example. There's a company named Novelis. Novelis is the #1 aluminum can developer in the world. They actually make all the aluminum cans for Coca-Cola. I work with a gentleman named Ovi Mihaly, who is an NFL Pro Bowl fullback and was injured about a year and a half ago. But there's a great book that I've always referenced to, and it's Mark Twain's Tale of Two Cities, because in the very beginning of that book, he says it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. And for us, when Ovi got hurt, we focused on using his celebrity and his ability as an athlete on the field to translate into bringing people into the room. We would go out all over the country and we would use the fact that here's an NFL player that has a true understanding of the environment and performs as well off the field as he does on the field. So we used his celebrity and we used people around the country like the Peyton Mannings and the Adrian Petersons and all these guys that he had access to start to bring these guys into this conversation, because we knew the strength and the potential of sports and entertainment. So long story short, when Ovi got hurt, it made us rethink the model that we had, and that's what I want to challenge you all to do today. I want you to rethink the model. We're not trying to change the way you think about sustainability. All of us believe that sustainability, you wouldn't be here today if you didn't think sustainability was going to be something that was basically very important for the next 10, 20, and 30 years of our nation. But it's very important because sports is the one place besides church that people come together and they forget their differences, but we have an opportunity to express our interest, not just in sustainability, but in sports as well. And this company, Novelis, through our relationship, they were one of our first sponsors for something we do called the Green Tailgate. And a Green Tailgate was when we would come out and we would focus on carpooling. We would focus on finding ways creatively to allow people to come out to a game and enjoy it, but to also make sure that sustainable principles were in place. So now, if you go to an Atlanta Falcons game, that Novellus is actually one of the biggest sponsors of the Atlanta Falcons now. Why? Because they believe in sustainability, and the Atlanta Falcons had an interest in sustainability. And in saying that, they understood that a part of their mission as a company would be to get involved at the front end of being sustainable. So I'll go over a couple of slides, and then I want to go straight into what the facilities around the country are doing. First, mainstream environmentalism. When we think about global warming and we think about preserving land, there's a quote by Lawrence Rockefeller that says the greatest opportunities come at the intersection of commerce and conservation. And Steve over here with Serenbe, which is one of my favorite places to go. I have 3 small children, so I get to get them out the city and let them run all their energy off on a regular basis. So I appreciate you having that property south of Atlanta. But to get back to the slide, when we think about environmentalism, these things tie in because when we come together and we come to these sports facilities, a lot of time the interest is not that people don't want to be sustainable, because most people will say, well, what does sustainability have to do with sports? I want to go to the game, drink beer, or watch the game with my kids, or get up and just enjoy myself and have a good time. And it wasn't until I went to Seattle, we actually had a chance. There's a group called the Green Sports Alliance, which I'll tell you more about a little bit later. But I went to Seattle, and Seattle has a very interesting model. They have a model of taking waste and recycling, global warming. I mean, they've put solar panels on their stadium, just like the Philadelphia Eagles. They have solar panels on their stadiums now. And what they do is they've literally cut back their solid waste by over 80% because they made recycling fun. I remember we got a tour in the area where the fans leave, and there's like this huge area where fans can just throw their beer bottles, into their, their recycling bins, and it turned it into an interactive type thing that they were able to do to get their fans excited about recycling. Their irrigation system, the fact that they made their building more efficient. These are things that are going to happen because even I was speaking to somebody the other day about getting waterless urinals. And they didn't get it. And I said, well, look, you're into the medical field. It's a public health issue. We have to meet people where they are. Because back to that slide that I told you about earlier when we said 61% of people identify themselves with sports and only 13% with science, a lot of the young professionals I meet, because my company, we consult, we build strategies for sustainability. And a lot of the companies that come to me says, well, Daniel, we want to recruit young people. We want to recruit a new generation of people to come into our organization and give us these bright new ideas, but they don't see where they fit in. So what I've been able to do is say, well, if you look at sports and if you look at a lot of the things that are going on now, there are so many things we can do and talk about now that will fill up these rooms with people that are other than architects. I think architects do a phenomenal job, but when we start to let people know that everything we do has a sustainable aspect, when we start to let people know we can have sustainability now and we can meet the needs of the present without compromising future generations to meet their own needs, I think that's very important. Now, where do we start? So there's some strategies for building community engagement, and those strategies consist of, the business case for going green. 1, cutting operational costs. That's very important because a lot of the facilities didn't realize it in the beginning when this conversation started with it was the Atlanta Hawks and the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat, where they play out, and forgive me, I forgot the name of the facility they actually play in, but when they were vying for their LEED certification, it became a competition of how do we cut costs. Now, I don't know about you, but yesterday, if you watch football, obviously this is my 3rd reference, so I candidly watch football, but yesterday at around 4 o'clock, free agency opened. And guess what? You can't sign a player that is not signed to another team unless you have the money and the space to do so. So guess what this does? This saves franchises, this saves facilities millions of dollars. When you add in efficiency programs, we just got back, and I'm kind of getting off of the slide for a second, but I just got back from Dublin, Georgia. Dublin High School just began a program where they're going to be the most energy efficient school in Georgia, because they have just added solar panels to their building. They've just made retrofits. What they're doing essentially is they're starting that model off early. The problem we're having now in the green sports industry is the sports facilities, and all of you will get a copy of the Game Changers report, but the sports industry they get it. Facilities managers, for the Falcons, for the 49ers, you think of the team, NBA, hockey, any league, they get it. The problem is at the collegiate level, it's more of a slow growing process. Now, I'm pleased to say that right up the street at Georgia Tech, and one of the main sponsors that's here today from McKinney's actually built their stadium, their new basketball stadium, and it has a huge sustainability aspect. So it enhances the sports brand, it attracts new sponsors. What do I mean by that? Back to the Novelis example. Novelis came on board, and now they're one of the biggest contributors and sponsors with the Atlanta Falcons because guess what? They had a sustainability interest, and so did the Falcons. And what we've done at the foundation that I told you about earlier with Ovi Mihaly is we've gone out and we've bridged these gaps. The NFL, unfortunately, even though the most people watch NFL over every other sport here in the United States, the problem is that the NFL has been one of the more slow professional leagues to catch on to this concept from an organizational standpoint. It's not that the facilities are not being green, it's the overall understanding from an executive level. So here are some of the things that have happened. Pro-green sports saving. The Orlando Magic cut theirs by about 25%. And they did this by simply adding retrofits. Now, these are organizations that they literally are going in and they're finding ways to make their businesses more sustainable. The Seattle Mariners, they cut natural gas use by 66% and electricity by 30%. They're saving $500,000 annually. Now, back to the Dublin example that I just gave you, this high school is literally taking their energy costs because they're generating solar power now. They're taking their energy costs from a liability side to the asset side. So now what they're doing essentially at these stadiums is they're saving money by being green, by being responsible. For so long, companies have touted corporate social responsibility with the idea of using it as a marketing ploy, but now they're actually starting to see real dollars that are being saved. The Staples Center, as you see, 178 waterless urinals, and they save $28,000 annually. Now, I'm not sure if most of the people in this room, I know you're very intelligent, but most people don't get the fact that $28,000 may be a small amount of money, but over time that adds up. $28,000 annually per season, it means that you can start doing a lot more in your facility, and you can now begin to go towards a more sustainable path. Now, back to the example about the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat initially was out front. They were on track to be the first LEED certified NBA facility in the United States. But guess what? We caught them, which is good for us. It's good for us at Phillips. But some of the great things that they're doing is they have an arena-wide energy efficiency upgrade program that saved them over $1.6 million. They did another program with drip irrigation that saved them $11,000. I mean, when you add up the cost and the savings and the potential of being more sustainable, it makes sense. It makes sense to all of us. It makes sense in the community, and it makes sense to those that are developing these projects. These are some teams that have actually saved by literally just going to recycled paper products. I mean, right in the back, we see how the compositable items are sitting there, and they show you how to put them in. I mean, that's very important. I went to an event, it was a grand opening of one of the sports facilities putting solar panels on their building, but they didn't have anywhere to recycle. So it's the education, the learning curve is what we really have to deal with. I'll give you a story. There was a village in Rwanda, and this group from the U.S. went over and they saw that the women were walking 10 to 20 miles just to get water every day. And so what they decided to do was, instead of these women having to walk so far, they said, well, you know what, why don't we just build a well and they'll not have to walk so far. Well, guess what? They built the wells, they came back a year later, and the women were still walking 10 or 20 miles. So they got to a point where they were scratching their heads and they said, well, why aren't they using these wells? So they went to one of the women and they said, well, why aren't you using them? And the first thing she said was, well, you never asked me. You never asked us. You built them, but you never asked them. And on top of that, these women, the only time of day we get away from our husbands is when we get to walk 20 miles to go to get water. Now that may be a cultural difference to some, but the problem that we've had in the sustainability conversation is not having the right conversations with stakeholders, not having the right conversations with fans. I can guarantee you right now, if the Atlanta Falcons, with all the opposition, and I have some great friends over at the Falcons, but with all the opposition that the Atlanta Falcons have gotten from the new stadium that will be built, the stadium will be built right around 2017, And with all the opposition that has happened as a result of that, I can almost guarantee you that if there was more community engagement, if there were more programs that showed how sustainability will work and how the public health issue right across the street from the Atlanta Falcons Stadium is English Avenue and Vine City, two of the most economically depressed areas in the United States. And on top of that, public health is an even more problem. But if the Atlanta Falcons, for instance, did community stakeholder engagement, which I'm sure they are, they have some really great people over there. But what we have to get away from is assuming that if we build it, they will come. Because how many people know if you build a stadium but no one pays, I mean, you can build the most sustainable stadium on the earth. But if nobody comes, then you have a freestanding building that's LEED certified. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend millions of dollars to build a building that no one's going to come to. So what we have to do is now understand why building and having these kind of conversations are important. So I'm going to go over a couple of slides really quickly on some steps that we've taken on how the strategy will work. So establishing a team, we focus specifically on first identifying a leader. If you don't have someone in your organization that's passionate, not someone that can just go out and find where the next conference is or go out and find out what the next opportunity is, but someone that's in your office. I mean, get a college intern if you have to, but have someone that every single day, 8 hours, 6 hours, 4 hours, whatever amount of the time of the day they can give you is committed to the idea of sustainability. But then engage your operational partners and vendors and then go into the community. This goes back to what I said about the new stadium that'll be built. Engage those leaders in the community because sustainability, at the end of the day, a pastor that I know very well here in Atlanta once told me that he said, you know, I didn't believe in environment more than I believed in preaching until I realized if I can't breathe, I can't preach. Makes sense. And guess what? It makes sense to everyone else in the community if they understand how they fit in the conversation of sustainability. Sustainability is not just about this LEED certification. If you ask the average person on the street what it means to have a LEED certification or, hey, my building is LEED Gold, that's not going to make them spend more money. But if we can get people to understand and comprehend and grasp onto the idea of sustainability, then they'll be more supportive of our companies. And it'll be easier when an architectural firm comes into a community and says, hey, we're going to build this 400,000 square foot facility and we'd like to have community input. It's easier to get community support and community buy-in when you have people that are engaging the vendors in the community on a regular basis. Set regular meetings and communication channels for all stakeholders. Let me make a misnomer, all right? Let me just say this really quickly. I am not saying that we need more meetings in Atlanta. That's not what we need. I think everyone can agree that there are so many meetings on sustainability. There's so many events. There's so many things we go to. And I thank Dennis and I thank Southface for putting on this event because this is one of the few events that actually brings the people together in one place. But as far as networking and passing out cards, what we're saying here in set regular meetings and communications is when you have the vision and the concept, whether it's a Serenbe or it's an Atlanta Falcons Stadium, set meetings that can gauge measurable goals. When I was a grant writer, we had to adhere to a set. We had a family fund grant that was pretty significant in number, and we had measurable goals that we had to meet on a consistent basis. So in saying that, we had to make sure that we followed through on a regular basis with how we were going to be able to build it. Thank you. So let me go ahead and kind of go through a little bit more. So evaluate where you are currently. Most people know where they are. And learn from what other green organizations are doing. It's the second bullet point, but learn from your peers and learn from what other organizations are doing. The one thing that we focus on when we build strategies for other organizations is to not reinvent the wheel. I think so many people that are doing green programs and doing green buildings, if you only knew that, guess what? There are other organizations in Portland, in Seattle, in New York, in San Francisco that are doing great things around green and around sustainability. I'm getting ready to go to Germany in a couple of weeks just to see some of the innovations they've done with solar. Why? Because I don't want to do something here and not understand the successes and the failures that took place in some other places. I'm going to go through because we have another presenter, but I want to focus on two case studies before I close. One, Ohio State University. I'm an SEC fan, but I applaud Ohio State for what they have done. Ohio State in 2012 reached 30.2% reduction in trash. Literally, they almost cut the amount of trash they accumulate per game in this particular season. 98.2% of diversion. And this was done during an Illinois game. The reason why I bring up Ohio State is because not only is it one of the most storied college, I don't know if I should say franchises, but it's one of the storied programs in the United States. The bottom line is the University of Ohio Stadium is the largest in the country to actually have achieved zero waste, which refers to diverting over 90% or 90% or more materials from the landfills and from compositing. And they're setting standards all over the country now, and they're actually going to be a green print for other stadiums around the country. And the untapped potential I want to share with you before I go into my next example before I close is ladies and gentlemen, the collegiate market is wide open. I mean, we have literally gotten to a point where the green franchises, they get it. I don't know how many of you know this, but the average football program on a college level, it actually makes so much money that it funds all other sports throughout the year. That's how much money college football generates. It makes enough money to be able to support volleyball, swimming, soccer, and every other sport that school offers. So look at the Ohio State program, and I'll make these points available to anyone that would like to look at them. They had a model that we already spoke about: listening, respecting, communicating, doing things that are balanced, and having a fair approach to understanding how you can build. Other schools that have done certain things, and again, I'll make this available. You might not see your school there, but Penn, they got lead goal over 52,000 square feet in their pavilion. Again, Georgia Tech has done some really great things, and I'm going to go on to Phillips Arena, and I'll close here. The Phillips Arena example, I want to use this to bring it home. In Atlanta right now, there are three potential projects that are going on that I think can really turn the tide of where we are as a city. First, that's Phillips Arena. I think us getting behind Phillips Arena and making sure that people know that story. I was listening to Stephen Covey one time, and he said that the best thing you can do when you get information is share it with somebody else. What we have to do, and my company's gonna put together a tour that will actually go through Phillips Arena, and you'll be able to see some of the outstanding things they've done, and I think that'll be a great opportunity. But on the flip side of that, the Atlanta Hawks have done a good thing, but the last two organizations I want to deal with are the Atlanta Falcons arena that will be built. Look at what's been done around the country and how we can make sure that we keep Arthur Blank and the Atlanta Falcons franchise on track. I'd love to see that retractable dome have solar panels on it. I'd love to see everything that we know will make it a great stadium. And lastly, Kennesaw State. And I want to use Kennesaw State as the last example because I think that they're a great example of having a new sports team that it will be open to your input. They'll be open to understanding what they can do to include sustainability in their football program. I want to thank everybody here. I want to thank Steve, and I want to thank Southface and Dennis, and also Dr. Alan Hershkowitz, who's not here, and Alice Henley with the Natural Resource Defense Council, who helped me to put this together. But I'll be around for questions, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.